Let's do this again. Hold on. Come on. Yeah.
We go.
Hello?
Y-
Yeah.
Yo,
Yeah, yeah,
yo,
yeah. What up, you beautiful
we
beast?
did it.
Damn. What's
How you
happening?
doing? How you doing?
Man, back together again. Let's go.
I know.
I'm in the studio. What's this?
The,
I'm in the
the, dy-
studio.
the dynamic duo. We wish we had our terrific trio, but obviously he's busy with the little one now. If anybody did not know that our commish and his wife, they had their little baby boy a couple weeks ago,
Yep.
and so he's busy being a dad, and I'm busy not being a dad. So I'm available to be here with you, Chef.
I'm a dad. What's going on?
I know
Maybe I'm not as good of a
your
father. I'm just
your
not,
your
I'm
priorities. K State
I'm
is
here
the
for the
priority.
people, man. I'm here for the people.
I know, I know. Well, well, obviously, in the past time since we've met, hasn't necessarily been too much stuff going on, except for things like Big 12 Media Days, which we're going to talk about here on the show. And then something, now we knew things were a little slow in the cocaine
Mm.
Willie department when your tweets pop up about would you rather.
Yeah, I have gone to the limits of my ability to hold in any K State anything. I just need something.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Well, I didn't necessarily participate a lot on Twitter with some of these would you rather's, so I'm excited. We'll go through some. I even have a couple to float your way. We'll see
Ooh.
what your thoughts are. And maybe we'll hear from some of the cokeheads at some point on Twitter about our terrible would you rather takes, which is quite likely at this point.
Dude, we are on top of it. They could
We're,
never.
we're on top of it, yeah. So why don't we get started? I know this past last week, Big 12 Media Days landed in Arlington, Texas, and it was a fun couple days just to see, not just from a Kansas State perspective, but our new four teams in the Big 12. We were able to hear more about what those teams are expecting in 2023. And there was a lot of excitement, obviously, in Big 12 Media Days this year, with K State being highly regarded in the Big 12. Expectation right now from the entire Big 12 and the media poll is that we're going to make it back to Arlington for the Big 12 championship game. Cross our fingers.
Toes,
Uh,
everything.
this upcoming season. But coming from the K State perspective, we had four great guys down there. Will Howard was down there, Kobe Savage, Cooper Beebe, and Daniel Green, who represented us very, very well. And of course, Coach Kleiman said a lot of great things. But from a K State perspective, Chef, uh, a lot of great, exciting things that you heard. Is there anything in particular that really uh, kind of just made you smile or just think about what the season maybe to come?
I mean, it's you just get this overwhelming vibe of confidence around the team, and especially from these four guys, they're all going to be captains. These are basically the snapshot of what 2/3 or you know basically the whole captaincy right there, and they're just spewing confidence. It's quiet confidence. They're not boasting. They're not bragging because I don't know. I don't remember what Baylor's vibe was last year going into Big 12 Media Days, but if it was anything like this, I could understand how not wearing your rings. I mean, nobody was wearing them, and they made a point of it. Like that was in the past. That was last year. We're a totally different team, and to a degree, that's true. I mean, you're missing some key components from that team last year, but the quiet confidence is what really struck me. Kleiman, he's he's going to be that stoic guy, but like our friend Scott Wildcat points out a lot, and a lot of people in the Big 12 media and K State media in particular, that when he's like, you get this vibe from him when he's a little more jovial, that he's a little more loose. that he feels real good about what we got coming this year, and I feel the same way. I mean, when you let Kobe Savage go down there and get on a mic, he's not gonna sugarcoat anything. He's like, hell, he had national championship spew out of his mouth, and when words like that are being floated around, man, I'm feeling some type of way, baby.
Yeah, absolutely. And I loved the confidence that we got out of Will Howard during that uh, during the day on Thursday. I mean, he has really grown into this leadership role of not just being the quarterback that's returning and things along those lines, but he's just showing these leadership characteristics that you absolutely have to have if you want to be a team that's going to be trying to repeat as a Big 12 champion. And it just shows the development and the growth that he's had, not necessarily just as a player, but coming in as a freshman and really having to, you know, learn to be a leader, even though you may not necessarily be mature enough. And that's just from an age perspective. And from what he's been able to do since the back half of last season and taking this off season and really displaying this sense of we have the capability as a team to be really good, and it's going to be something where every single position is going to have to come together and play as hard as I'm going to have to play game in and game out. And so it was great hearing him in his interviews, just being being that quarterback and that face of what you think this team is going to be this year. And that really showed a lot. And a couple other things just with, I would say, with Coach Kleiman and some of the things that we heard, and we can kind of talk about this a little bit, but there's always some talk about, okay, who are some players that we might expect could get some
Mm.
time, maybe some true freshmen out there, some of the transfers. A guy that Coach Kleiman really talked about a ton is Marquise Seigel, the safety that is coming in from North Dakota State, and how just being able to come in and he's expecting a lot from him and coming into that role. And obviously, we've had a lot of success with some of the transfers that have come in into that safety role. And Josh Hayes, of course, was drafted this past season. Were there any surprises of players' names that you might have heard from the K-State side that get you really excited about them getting some playing time this fall?
I mean, you always hear the usual the culprits, like Cooper Beebe is always going to shout out basically the whole two deep offensive line. So I'm really happy about that. Like, there's no like the guys behind him and that O line that's coming back. They've got so many reps of just constantly working and getting so much praise throughout multiple years that next year, after this year, I am totally not worried about the offensive line. As much as a lot of people are going to focus on that, I'm not. But Carter Willis, that's a huge shout out. I'm hoping that he comes back and he is a swing tackle that we can rotate in. Uh, and then the biggest surprise for me was Austin Romaine. I mean, he's kind of forgot about in that recruiting class. I mean, a kid from St. Louis, you know, sideline to sideline guy, huge, big bodied, and obviously he's ready to play right now. He's obviously developed enough where he might crack some rotation minutes at Mike, which would be crazy. But those guys, a true freshman like that coming in and being able to play, he was not on my radar as a guy that we're not going to count on him, but someone that is shown enough in spring ball and summer that he's ready for action, and fall camp's going to do a lot of is the proving ground really for me. So those are some guys, but I was more surprised that we didn't hear names. I don't know about you, but like names I was expecting to hear, like Will Lee, he got brought up maybe a couple times, but he wasn't. I thought he would be a guy that would pop, and be the talk of the town. Basically, you have the Julius Brent's blueprint with him stepping right into it. And we just didn't hear that. But obviously, like I said, fall camp is the proving ground, and I'm sure we'll hear his name more. But I'm I'm hoping we hear his name more, for gosh
Y-
sakes.
Yeah, I would anticipate we will. Just there's a limited amount of time and a limited amount of snaps. I'm sure that he's seen here early in spring ball. There were another, couple names that I just wanted to bring up and get your thoughts on. I know Coach Kleiman, and I also listened. I don't know if you listened, and I'll plug another great K-State podcast in Three Maw, but they had Coach Kleiman on last week, and he talked about the defensive line and thinking about Nate Matlack and having him back, and how are we going to the theme of how are we going to replace Felix Anudike, and of course, Khalid Duke is a guy that everybody's anticipating is going to have potentially a similar role that Felix had, and he talked. Coach Kleiman talked about um, 2021 and the strong season that he had in the beginning of that season, and playing on the defensive line or defensive end, and um, we're going to expect almost it seemed like similar production that we saw from Felix, and having Nate Matlack back at 100%, and Brendan Mott, who we saw had really good flashes last season. It seemed like from a defensive line perspective, even though you lose a first round pick, there's some sense within the program that this is going to be a really good group of guys there that almost seem like they have to prove themselves a little bit, and show what type of effort they could put in during these games and what type of production they can put in, which just sounded really exciting, all things considered, because we saw how good Felix was all season in 2021. But that is an area that it seemed just losing him a little bit. We had some talent, but it wasn't necessarily talked about as much. So it got me a little excited to hear some things like that.
Yeah, you would think losing a first round draft pick off of the D line when God knows when the last time we had a first round D lineman go. I don't know if ever. I mean, maybe Howard back in,
Yeah, maybe I would have to look.
but I mean, you would think that would be like a death sentence for like the depth and the talent on the D line. But really, if you think about it, it's kind of weird. If Khalid Duke doesn't go down in week 3 versus Nevada, do we even hear about Felix? Is it the roles reversed? Like Khalid Duke is the guy that goes in the first round and Felix is the guy filling his shoes? I mean, who knows? Because we always heard about the pop that Felix was going to bring, but he was the underclassman. And Khalid Duke had that monster COVID season with the Oklahoma game, and he was on the rise. And then he comes back, and it just took him a little bit longer to get back from that knee injury. And playing linebacker kind of opened his eyes to like what responsibilities the whole field of football is about. Like you've got other responsibilities that if you play your role at defensive end, you're helping the guys behind you. And I think he's due for a monster season, man. I mean, if we can get 2021 Khalid Duke, we're not missing a beat.
Hmm.
We're not. And that's another guy, another defensive lineman that Cooper Beebe brought up. Chidi, what is his name? Chidi Obazar.
Yeah, yeah,
I think that's how we're saying it. I'm
something
not
like that.
sure.
Yeah.
Chidi Obazar. I mean, I have he gives me Jalen Pickle vibes like crazy. I mean, a
Mm.
guy coming out of high school that was like 6'5", 270, and filled into like a D tackle frame, but plays D end. I could see him having. I mean, he's gonna be a monster for us, boy. He's gonna
Yeah.
be a monster.
Yeah, I mean, and thinking about the strength that we have in that particular position group, we, of course, losing Eli Huggins is a huge loss for us. And Coach Kleiman had mentioned guys like Uso Seumalo and Daniel Ilalio. I gotta try and
Damon Ilalio. I think
is
that's
it
how you
is
say
it
it.
is it?
I think there's
I thought
another.
it was Daniel. Whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway,
What did I say?
um, Damon.
Oh, dang it. I
Ooh,
don't
I
know.
don't know. But anyway, but that's gonna be a position where you're gonna need somebody to step up. And we saw Uso kind of towards the end of last season, of course, had the big stop during the TCU game. But it looks like he's developed, gotten to the weight room, getting himself in really good shape to potentially be the starter at defensive tackle. So it will be very interesting to see that particular line and how they develop together throughout the season. But I there are so many players you kind of mentioned, some players we didn't necessarily hear a lot about, but we know are good, like Ben Sinnott. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously he's such a talent and he's getting media praise, especially
NFL draft.
yeah, for sure. Which if he has another season like he had this past year, he'll be in the conversation for that for sure. But he mentioned guys like Keegan Johnson as well, getting him up to speed, RJ Garcia, and got me excited from an offensive perspective that although you lose Deuce Vaughn, Cade Warner, Malik Knowles, there are guys that are stepping up and have the talent to be able to replace some of that production. And we'll talk later on in the season about, prior to the beginning of the season, what our predictions are. Do we think this offense is going to skip a beat at all with some of the guys that we've lost, or is Colin Klein going to put something together? But I mean, overall, the Big 12 Media Day, at least for me, from a K-State perspective, I mean, I want football like right now.
Yeah, you gotta have it. I mean, it's just there's not enough of it to go around, and it's spread so thin. And what are we down to, like 46 days, 45 days
Yeah.
to week 0? But Kansas State. I saw a Baylor podcast that Baylor won the Big 12 Media Day. Like they won it. Like what are we talking about? The defending champions. We started off day 2. I mean, Brett Yormark doesn't even mention us as the champions of football during his opening thing. He says TCU is went to the national championship game. Is the chip there? Do you think the chip's there? I feel it. I feel the chip is heavy on my shoulder. So I think the boys are feeling it, and we're ready to ride. So I don't know if I don't know where we want to transition to this about Big 12 Media Days, but I'd like to talk about the 4 new teams, and I don't know if they're ready. if that's
All right.
cutting it if that's cutting it a little crazy, but I mean I don't think they're ready because it's going to be this season in particular is going to be nuts. 14 teams, never been done before, and it's the last season for Texas and OU, so there's going to be just total mayhem every
Mhm.
week. So I don't know if you want to go down them one by one, but yeah,
Yeah,
give
I
them to
think
me.
it would be good. I mean, why don't we just go in maybe alphabetical order or something like that? But
Hold
BYU.
on.
Oh, no, no,
Well,
no.
no, we got to make sure where we putting University of Central Florida. They don't.
Oh,
They
shit.
like.
Yeah.
They're not
All
Central
right.
Florida.
Well, I know at least we could start with the B. So BYU, BYU and their head coach Kalani Sitake. He's been at BYU for a while now. I mean, he took over after Bronco Mendenhall left for Virginia. If anybody did watch BYU and any of their media days, the only player that they brought that might have at least a little bit of name recognition is their quarterback, Keaton Slovis. He started at USC and then he went to Pitt. And he was at Pitt last year when they did play West Virginia and beat West Virginia in the backyard brawl. But he had obviously a great season at Pitt, and he transfers to BYU to be the starting quarterback this season. Um, BYU as a whole is going to be an interesting one to see how they transition into the Big 12. Number one, being an independent team that doesn't necessarily have a set schedule every single season. And for the last handful of years after they left the Mountain West, have been putting together a schedule that has had some good teams, but has some not very good teams. And so sometimes that can skew your schedule a little bit. But they're sensed a little bit of confidence in that BYU, in the BYU team of being able to come in and be competitive right away, which I don't necessarily agree with thinking about their schedule, but thinking about BYU, is there anything during Big 12 Media Day that surprised you or any overall comments about BYU coming
Yeah,
12?
BYU, in my personal opinion, going into when the realignment first happened and we announced the teams that were coming to the Big 12, was it 2 years ago? I think so.
Mhm.
BYU, I thought, was a sleeping giant that would, excel, regionally, uh, history wise, you know, talent wise, they've always they were a developmental school where they get the international players, they go on missions, come back, and then they're every 4 years they have a group of, I mean, entirely adults, 30-year-old guys playing college football. Uh, for me, I thought they were going to be the cream of the crop coming in, and last year would have been the team that I thought would have been able to make some noise in the Big 12. But this year's roster, from everything that I've gathered and listened to, this team is going to kind of take a dip down a little bit. So, this coming season, I think is going to be a little eye opening for them. And sorry about that. Go away. Uh, they seem like they've played Baylor back to back seasons, and they've hung around with them. So I don't know if that's a tale of what they can bring as far as Big 12 competition. But, BYU, they've kind of take a step back for me, and especially for this coming season, I don't know if they're really ready for it.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say this upcoming season for BYU will be a little bit tougher. Thinking about their schedule, at least from a Big 12 perspective, their games at home, they play Cincinnati, Texas Tech, Iowa State, and Oklahoma in their first season. So they only have 4 Big 12 games at home. They go on the road to Oklahoma State, on the road to West Virginia. We can probably have differing opinions about how Oklahoma State's going to be this year, but I would say West Virginia, obviously, I don't think is going to be very good. They also go on the road to Lawrence. They play KU, but BYU is going to be a team in football, basketball, etc., that I think they're going to have a slow start in the Big 12, but they will at some point get to an upper echelon in the conference based just on the fact that they do have a strong recruiting base. They do bring in really good players. We've seen BYU. I mean, despite Zach Wilson being terrible in the NFL, I mean, he was a really good quarterback in college. Jaron Hall this past season was really good. In the past, they've brought in really good players. And so even though this season may not necessarily be at the level that we've seen BYU in the past, I think they are going to slowly move their way up. But this year smells like a 3-9 type situation, and they go to Arkansas on the road too. They play Texas and Austin. I mean, I don't
I
know.
got 5-7 written all over them. I'm not going to go as far as to say they're the very bottom dwellers of the conference, but I think
Okay.
they're going to be creeping down there. I'm not convinced that Arkansas is going to be any good either. But look, that's a totally different day. We're
Yeah,
not ready for that conversation.
that's fair. That's fair. Well, after BYU, I mean, we can look at go alphabetical order, and admittingly on the Big 12 website, the next one is UCF, Central Florida. So with Central Florida, for Big 12 Media Days, they of course brought Gus Malzahn, who everybody knows was the Auburn coach, and then I just completely blanked as to where he was before Auburn. Oh my
Where
God.
wasn't he Iowa State?
No, that was Gene Chizik.
Gene
Oh
Chizik.
my
Poor
God. This is embarrassing. Gus Malzahn.
he was at Auburn.
Yeah, no. I know he was at Auburn, but he was somewhere before Auburn, and now I'm
Oh, I
like,
have no idea. Before Gus Malzahn?
oh, Arkansas State. Okay,
I would have never got that.
would have never guessed that. Okay, never mind. But anyway, of course, Gus Malzahn is their head coach. They've had some very successful seasons as a program. And then this past season, it did have a great season in their last one in the American Conference. From the players that they did bring, John Reese Plumlee, their quarterback, is going to be a name you may have heard in the past. He was the quarterback at Ole Miss before he transferred to UCF. He is not just a quarterback, but he also is a baseball player. I would say out of the four teams that are coming into the Big 12, UCF is probably the one that I would at least see in their first season having the most success out of the four teams. They are the first game for us in Big 12 play. They come to Manhattan on September 23rd. But as a whole, I would say their schedule does fit for them to have a pretty decent season in the Big 12. They do play Houston, they play Cincinnati, who I would say are the two. Don't think they're going to have great seasons, but they also play West Virginia as well this season, kind of what we expect to be a bottom dweller. But anyway, there's definitely a sense that UCF can come in and really compete here in their first season in the Big 12.
No doubt. If I had to put money on who of the four is most ready and will produce year one, it's the team with the most experienced quarterback. And I think I mean, you could go with Slovis, but Slovis's talent, I mean, compared to where Plumlee is, uh, this guy is electric. And from everything that he did in the American, he's going to be a handful. Whether their O line is up to bat, I don't know. Skill players, you just don't know how it's going to translate from the talent that they had, where they can run a conference and be at the top end of the American Conference, to being in the Big 12 and going through that gauntlet week in, week out. You just don't know. But from what I've seen, I think they have enough to be, the middling Big 12. So they will be the toughest challenge of the four for K-State, especially because we only see two of them, and we'll get to the other one here in a second. UCF's future in the conference, it's been documented. They're going to have a humongous alumni in future years, because their school is just ever growing. They're in a talent-rich state, so they're going to be able to recruit. They're already kind of trending upward in recruiting. Basketball is another issue. I don't want. We can talk about
Yeah,
basketball.
they're going to be asking basketball,
They're going
but
to be really, really bad. But football wise, I think they've invested in that program. They've invested in this school. They have a lot to bring, especially for teenage boys. You know, Looking at their program with the flashy uniforms, the location that they're at, I think they can be a real problem on the recruiting trail. And down the road, like you said, BYU building up, 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 and up. I think they're on the exact same trajectory. And where will they fit in this year? I think they're going to be a little salty.
yeah, I think so. I do sometimes look at the schedule and think of, okay, would you rather play a certain team at a certain point during the season? And in many years for us, it's always, can we play Oklahoma in the beginning of the Big 12 schedule? I think playing UCF early on is going to be a really good test for us, but it's going to be a team that I think it's good to play them early on in the first game,
Exactly.
because I think as that team gains more experience in the Big 12, playing on the road, playing against some tougher opponents, that is one that I could see pull some upsets later on down the line, for sure.
The only the only thing I have to say about that is I like where your head's at with playing them early, because they're not going to be what would they expect? What would they be expecting from Big 12 play? I don't know who's their non-con schedule. I mean, if you want to look that up real quick.
Their
Uh,
non-conference schedule is Kent State, at Boise State, and Villanova.
okay, Villanova's a dub. Boise State at Boise State.
At Boise State.
Oof, that could be a little spicy one, but
That's an interesting one.
I think playing them early is the key, but also playing them late, because they have been recruiting in the American for so long. Testing their depth going later into the season is really, really what separates, the Oklahomas and the Texas and the Oklahoma States and the K States from basically a lot of other teams that are like an Americans and the bottom end of the Big 12 is just that depth. When you get to that second and third tier player, are they able to play and keep your team at a level where you're competitive? So we'll see if the injury bug starts happening for UCF, will they have enough players to keep them going and drag their dead their astronaut corpse through the Big 12 schedule? I don't know.
Oh wow, who knows? I think that's a good segue to the next team that we want to talk through is probably alphabetical Cincinnati. Cincinnati Bearcats, a team that I would say for a little while we've talked about having them join the Big 12. They've had a ton of success in football. Obviously, recently, 2 years ago, made the college football playoff. And then in the past, their football program has been good, basketball program, etc. But talk about a Cincinnati team that I legitimately have no excitement for, and I don't know how their fans have any excitement for it either, because you lose Luke Fickle, who has had, in the limited amount of time he was at Cincinnati, has had a ton of success. He's done great recruiting. He's got a ton of guys in the NFL. And Wisconsin opens up. I don't blame him for leaving. Wisconsin, one of the top programs in the Big Ten, I would say, from a prestige perspective, and the success that they've had. And so they decide to go and hire Scott Satterfield, who is very much a middling coach. And for Louisville, I mean, did not do a lot of great things at Louisville. And it seems like the Cincinnati opportunity was basically saying, I probably have one more year at Louisville before I get fired, so I might as well take the guaranteed contract and leave. I have no excitement for Cincinnati whatsoever this season. Out of the players they brought for Big 12 Media Day, the one that maybe some of us have heard of is Emory Jones, their quarterback, who at one point was at Florida. At one point he was at Arizona State. I would say the Florida Emory Jones is the one that I heard of the most, because he did have some success, but wasn't anything crazy, let me tell you. And so for me, as somebody who loves watching college football, and I'm going to love watching the new teams in the Big 12 for sure, except for this one, because I just have I don't know. There's just nothing that excites me about
I gotta cut it. I gotta cut it. You're killing
I know,
Cincinnati right now.
I know. I'm
They're
sorry.
already dead, man. Leave them alone.
I have to be honest. I
You
mean,
have to be.
there's just nothing that excites me. Luke Fickle brought a lot of excitement because he made his teams competitive.
Yeah.
And we saw, I mean, them in the American Conference, them and UCF, we're battling in that conference. Houston was as well. We'll talk about here in a second. But, there was a lot of excitement about that Cincinnati program. And I feel like after this coaching change, we've heard nothing about Cincinnati at all. Just absolutely nothing. And so that, for me, as a college football fan, I'm like, what is there here that should excite me into watching their games? I don't see anything there.
It's tough to see. And when you listen, talking Big 12 Media Days, what's his name? Scott Satterfield. He did not, he wasn't going to sugarcoat what his team's expectations were going into the new Big 12. He still thinks that they're a program that has to basically rebuild this roster, because a lot of them did transfer out as soon as Luke Fickle left. And I'll tell you, from being in Ohio and some Bearcat fans that I have interacted with that I know personally, Luke Fickle was never the guy that they thought would stick around. They were always prepared in the back of their mind for him to leave for, like, say, an Ohio State, somewhere down the road, a bigger Big Ten school. Did they expect it to be Wisconsin the year right before? I mean, a couple months before they enter the Big 12? No, they weren't expecting that. Maybe they thought a couple of years with Cincinnati in the new Big 12 and him prove himself here would be the catapult that he needed to get that Big Ten job. But It came a little earlier than they expected, but they did expect him to leave. So they're not too upset about that, but the roster, the way it's constructed right now with Scott Satterfield, from what he could retain, it's not boding well. Emory Jones was the quarterback that was brought to Big 12 Media Days, and there's it's still kind of a toss up. He barely won that thing in spring, and I don't know if he's going to have the longest leash with the Bearcats this season. They're gonna have it's gonna be an uphill battle to try to get these victories for Cincinnati. I would have loved for them to be on K State's schedule this year. At Cincinnati, I would have been able to take a little 2 hour drive right down there to the Queen City and watch my boys eat a skyline and watch K State dig a hole in them. But it's this team, like you said, it's uninspiring. It doesn't bring a lot to the table, and it's hard to find the excitement for them because they are such a proud program and they've had such recent history of success in both sports that it's a shame that they're gonna limp into the Big 12 instead of throwing themselves in, throwing punches.
Yeah. Is it a team that I think has the capability to do more in this conference at some point? Yes, I think they will. It will be fun to see if they're able to bring in some more talent and compete, but it may just be me of just not believing in what Scott Satterfield has done,
Yeah.
and his time at Louisville. That just doesn't show a ton of promise, for a program that maybe you try and do a little bit more of an up and comer, maybe get an offensive coordinator who's young, or a young mid-major head coach to come in and try and revitalize the program. So it just seemed like a little bit of a decision that wasn't necessarily great. But of course, we will see this upcoming season what they're going to be able to put together.
It's those App State coaches, man. Like you got Dorkowitz at Missouri and
Yeah.
Satterfield. When you coach at App State, man, you kind of got that stink on you. It's that stank.
Yeah, from Boone.
Boone, North Carolina's
Yeah,
got that
Boone, North
stank.
Carolina. All right, and then we'll talk about the last team here that's joining the conference, and the Houston Cougars. This is a team that we know their head coach. Obviously, Dana Holgerson was at West Virginia. He spent time with Oklahoma State as their offensive coordinator when I was in college at K-State. But the Houston Cougars, they are going to be an interesting team for me. Number one, we're going to be playing them, of course, this season at home for homecoming on October 28th. And it was interesting to me that during their media days, they did not bring a quarterback, but they have a quarterback who's transferred in from Texas Tech in Donovan Smith, who at his time in Texas Tech showed a lot of promise and a lot of talent. He's a mobile quarterback, very quick on his feet, has some opportunity to improve in the passing game. But for him to come into a Dana Holgerson offense actually scares me a little bit, because I do think just with what talent he showed in his time at Texas Tech, he needs some skill players around him. That's for sure. But Houston could be a team that, I wouldn't say this season, but maybe next season, year after, they're going to be a team to be scared about, just because they're in Texas. I think the Big 12 is going to help from recruiting perspective. And obviously, we're talking about football right now, but basketball is a whole other animal. But Houston, again, they're going to be coming to K-State. They have a good home schedule with TCU, Texas, West Virginia. I would say TCU and Texas are probably the two ones that it'll be really exciting to see, number one, what the crowd looks like for those games, having Texas teams come down to Houston. But as a whole, Houston is a team that I think has a little bit of talent, and I think they have a lot of promise at quarterback. But it is going to be maybe a little bit more of a struggle this season to get into, to kind of acclimate to this conference based off of the schedule and based off of what they have.
Yeah, Houston is a monster that's ready to be awoken. They've just had nothing to. I mean, they've been successful. Don't get me wrong, but the crowd, fanfare behind the program just hasn't been there. They've always had decent players. They've always put up fights against, who they played Texas not too long ago. Back in, this was maybe 5-6 years ago when what's his nuts was coaching down there. But they always had those battles, and for me, the fit wise with Houston in the Big 12, it just looks like Houston belongs in the Big 12, just aesthetically. I guess that's the way I see it. Can they become something more? I don't know. It's the recruiting is going to be important. Does Dana Holgerson have the fight to stay and take on the Big 12 challenge again? He kind of ran away from it when he was at West Virginia, leaving surprisingly out of nowhere. But for this roster that's assembled, I think them in Cincinnati are battling to see who's going to be the bottom team coming into the Big 12 from the new group that's coming in. It's going to be tough for them. I heard the audacity of a Houston, I don't know if they were a writer or just like, just a fan with a blog or vlog that said that Donovan Smith is getting Geno Smith vibes from that Dana Holgerson coached at West Virginia. I don't see it, but if Donovan Smith takes that leap that he has the talent to do it that he showed sometimes at Texas Tech, they could be scary. They could be. I don't know, but I just don't see it this year for them. It's going to be tough. They kind of got picked apart in the transfer portal. People were plucking their players left and right. Their O-line is in shambles, but they're going to have athletes and they're going to have speed, but it's just a different beast when you're playing these games, and then every week it's going to be a different challenge for them.
Yeah.
Especially, the way Big 12 is set up now, West Virginia is really the only bad team. Maybe Iowa State, but that's only because gambling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I will say, and I don't know if you can look too much into it from a media days perspective, but if you think about it, for most teams, who do you bring? You bring a quarterback, maybe another skill player, and then some stars on defense or something along those lines. And for Houston, they did not bring one skill offensive player to media days, which shows, hey, we hit the transfer portal, so maybe we're not in a position to bring somebody like that, or maybe we just don't necessarily have some of that talent yet.
Donovan Smith is still battling. They have
Yeah,
another quarterback down there that is trying to win the job as well. And it's not like he's full out won the job. He's kind of just the preemptive starter. So that could say a lot, that they didn't bring him down. So maybe he's not necessarily the guy right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. There is an Arkansas transfer, it sounds like, who they brought in. They have some freshmen as well. I guess I'm on the Donovan Smith hype train.
Oh, yeah, that's my guy. I loved him at Texas
I
Tech.
love interconference transfers too. So that they play.
I
Let's see. I'm pretty sure they play. They play Texas Tech this year. Maybe not. No, I lied. Sorry. They play the two Texas team. Or no, they do. They go to Texas Tech.
Oh, damn, baby.
Yeah.
Oh, Donovan.
So that could be really interesting.
I hope he wins because Texas Tech is getting a lot of love, man.
Yeah, I know. I don't get it, but I do. I do get it. I do get it because I think they have the capability to do really well this season in the Big 12. I believe in Joey McGuire. I guess he showed last season there's promise in that program again, which we hadn't necessarily seen with the Matt Wells, while he was there. But I don't want to get too ahead of a Big 12 preview of all these teams, but I don't know. Texas Tech, I guess I can be high on Texas Tech while also believing that high could be like 8-4.
No,
I think for them.
I think that is a good season for them, and it's really all based on Tyler Shuck because when he got hurt, they relied on Donovan and their season kind of went, a little like middling, but they were undefeated when he was healthy. So could they make some noise if he stays alive and stays upright? Maybe, but if he gets hurt, they don't have Donovan Smith to roll the ball out to this time. So, but they have that one kid that they kind of like too. But whatever. Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares about them?
Who cares? Texas Tech. Oh my God. Um, well, yeah. So that's the recap of the four new schools in the Big 12. Again, I think just being associated with the Big 12 and going to K State and watching Big 12 football for all these years, it is exciting to see some new blood come into the conference. And who knows, maybe we'll be talking about this a year from now with some even more new blood.
New old
Hopefully,
blood.
new old blood, and maybe some new blood at
Yeah.
some point.
I was thinking
Uh,
about this with like my kids are never gonna know. Like my oldest is almost 8. Like they'll never know like the Nebraska rivalry. They'll never know well they might, but the Colorado rivalry and just these teams that are coming in. This is the Big 12 that they're gonna know. They're gonna
yeah,
know BYU versus Baylor is kind of like a thing.
yeah,
They're gonna know like Texas Tech versus Houston and shit like that is going to be those are going to be the games that they think of when they think of the Big 12 when they go to K-State.
yeah.
So,
No, that's a great point. I mean, Colorado. I would obviously love to see Colorado. And they were, of course, in the Big 12 when I was in school. Not dating myself, but it is going to be interesting. Thinking 8 to 10 years from now, what college football is going to actually look like, because it's not going to look anything like it is right now. Just like how right now we never would have expected
nope.
8 years ago, it was going to look like this. We thought we were going to be in the Mountain West of all places. So,
Zoinks.
yeah, could have been a lot worse. Could have been a lot worse.
It could have been.
But the last part of our show, excites me a lot because I think it gives you an opportunity to give us some really good would you rathers. I know everybody participated on Twitter, and it was interesting to hear some of the results from some of the good ones that you may have seen. But I don't know, for some people that maybe don't have Twitter, maybe they're 100% Threads users now.
Oh God.
Because fuck Elon Musk. But I don't know if you want to throw some of them out there and just get some of our listeners thinking.
I mean, the number one, voted and one that was interacted was a would you rather of, you know, a full healthy Skylar Thompson or a full
Mm-hmm.
healthy Jesse Ertz. And that one's like when I thought of the question, I was thinking about those boys like I was watching old games, just like I'm getting pumped for the season. And Jesse Ertz going down in I think it was like week 1. It might have been week 1 in 2015 or 2000
Um,
and
I was trying to. I think it was. I remember being at that game. Wasn't it 2017?
oh no. No way. Cuz 2017 was his
No, 16 was the season, his really good season.
really good season.
And then 17. I'm
Because it
pretty
was the
sure.
year Joe Hubner came in and was basically
Uh,
the starting quarterback.
oh,
So I
that
think it
was
was 15.
2015. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
15. Okay,
it
sorry,
was Cody
sorry. Yeah,
because it was the quarterbacks were Cody Cook and Joe Hubner, and that's just brutal to think about. But Jesse Ertz, a full season there, a full season of 16, and in 17 was the Vanderbilt year. Um,
yeah, that's right.
but Jesse Ertz could have been, he could have been in the top. He could have been there. He could have been the guy. Jay Hook himself, he was electric fast. He
Yeah,
had a nice little touch on the ball. He threw it. He had some weapons with him too. I mean, that was the Byron Pringle kind of opening. He kind of brought Byron Pringle to the limelight and Dominic Heath, and I'm just thinking of all those boys that he was throwing it to. But he could have been somebody. But then you
yes,
also
yeah. No,
You
I
also
was.
have to think of like what Skylar Thompson could have been if he had full healthy seasons, and what could have been if he didn't go down in 2020. Could we be talking about, like, this year hasn't happened, but back to back Big 12 titles? Because 2020 was up for grabs. For
Mm,
God's sakes, Iowa State was there. So I'm just
that's
saying.
interesting. That's interesting.
And we beat Oklahoma that year, so fuck them.
I I was looking back to Jesse Hurts and the 2015 season and kind of just trying to remember a little bit of it. So he got hurt in that South Dakota game, first game of the year.
Yep.
And
Like the
so
first play.
yeah. And we went on a 6-game losing streak in that season.
I remember.
And it was at Oklahoma State, which I was at that game, and we were up because Cody Cook just had this incredible game, but we lost on a field goal. But then we lose the TCU game at home,
That was
which
the
we
Joe
had.
Huebner game
Yeah,
versus Trayvon Boykins.
yeah.
Because
And,
it was Baylor and TCU that was the top dogs, and they were like that was the Trayvon Boykins with the power cat on his sleeve game.
yeah, and God, yeah. So, like for me, thinking about this, and were you the Skylar Thompson injury? Were you talking about was it 2020 or 2021?
For me, 2020. Well, 2020, I think we had the best chance, you know, because it was such a shortened season, that if we had a leader at quarterback, we could have been all right, because we were, other than outside of the Arkansas State game, we kind of went on a roll, and then we played Texas Tech, and we end up winning that game, and then
Okay.
because it was Arkansas State, we lost that game. It was just, blindsided. Then
Hmm.
we beat Oklahoma, and I think then we play Texas Tech,
Yep.
and he gets hurt, but we beat
Yep.
Texas Tech, and then we beat TCU with Will Howard. I think
Yep.
all those games we would have won with Skylar Thompson. But then there were so many close games outside of the Iowa State game where the wheels really fell off, that
Yeah.
we could have won, and we could have been, a really good team. 2021, on the other hand, if a healthy Skylar Thompson, I mean,
We
he
pro
came back later in the season, but he wasn't himself. But
we probably beat Oklahoma State on the
that was the
road.
that was the fumble by Will Howard.
He did fumble in that game, and then we could not. Well, Will Howard also got hurt in that game, and Jaron Lewis played.
Okay, that's not the same game then. That 2020 was the fumble by Jesse Hurts that
Yes.
got returned. I mean, not Jesse
Uh,
Hurts, by
uh,
Will
yes.
Howard that got returned.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so 2021 with a healthy Will Howard, do we win that game? I mean, with a healthy Will Howard and a healthy Skylar Thompson, do we win that game?
Yeah.
Maybe.
2020. I mean, the Oklahoma State game in 2020.
We would have won that with a Skylar Thompson
Yeah.
easily.
And then it's tough because we had a couple games in there that were not great. Somehow we lost on the road to West Virginia by 27 points. I don't remember that game, but
What game was?
I probably turned it off, and it was
Oh
Halloween night.
no, that was the game. Deuce Vaughn hurt his thumb. He had a cast on his thumb that 2020 season, and he was basically shut. He just was a shell of himself. He couldn't catch the ball really. He had hurt his thumb in that 2020 season, and he had a cast on his hand. Uh, but
Okay.
Will
Yeah.
Howard was throwing picks left and right. Uh, it was bad. That was probably the quintessential bad Will Howard game of his freshman season, other than Baylor and
Okay.
Iowa State. But the Iowa State game is null and void because Iowa State didn't test for COVID. So fuck them.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. For me, the 2020 season, I just kind of like completely sweep under the rug just because I think there were just so many
Mm-hmm.
there were so many things that went on in that game or that season that I don't know if a healthy Skylar Thompson affects that. Do I think a 2015 season we still went to a bowl in
Yeah,
2015 also.
Liberty Bowl, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. So maybe it was good to have, or I would probably end up just picking Jesse Ertz just because watching Joe Huebner and Cody
Oh,
Cook throw the football all season
it was
was
brutal.
there were some mildly entertaining moments, but there were times where you're like, man, the quarterback depth is not great.
I agree with you that I would pick Jesse Ertz because I think we had the best potential of being good, but I also don't want to ruin Will Howard's story arc if Skylar Thompson is healthy. Do we
That's
get
fair. Yeah.
the same Will Howard that we get now if he's just the backup quarterback learning, watching, instead of getting thrown into the fire and have 80% of his fan base hate him for no reason other than being 17 years old? I don't know.
That's
So
fair.
I
Fair.
pick Jesse Ertz. What's the next? Would you rather? Who was it? What was
I
another one
actually,
that?
I got one. I'll throw
Yeah.
your way.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Let's get some new ones, baby. Let's go. Give
Yeah.
me it.
All right. So, would you rather have had Josh Freeman stay for one more year or Michael Beasley stay for one more year? And I don't
Both.
want to. Okay. I don't. No. And I don't want to look at it as like, oh, this is how much money they made. They were both first round draft picks.
Yeah.
One would have been so Josh Freeman would have had 1 year under Bill Snyder.
Mm.
Michael Beasley would have had another year with Jacob Pullen and that group, and would have had, wait, 2009. No, God, we were kind of ass in 2008 though. But anyway, he would have been obviously a star
Yeah.
player.
We'd have been dirty. Wasn't that Rodney Magruder's like freshman year?
No, because he was no, he was a freshman in 2009. So
Yeah.
the 2008 team would have had like uh, Jake, Darren Kent. I don't know why I threw that, but Dominique Sutton would have been another
Yeah.
one. So I have my
I know my answer.
okay.
Is that for me?
No, it's this. Hold on,
Oh,
I'm in my parents' basement.
it's all good,
So
baby.
mine would have been Josh
Michael
Freeman.
Beasley. Oh.
See, I knew. All right, here's why. So I think about the 2009 season, and so
Mhm.
we went 6-6 that season,
Yeah.
but we
Real bad.
played two FCS teams, which is why we didn't make it to a bowl. But we lost on the road to Louisiana Lafayette. Josh Freeman, we win that game. The UCLA game, we lost 23-9. The big thing this season was we could not score to save our life. But we had guys like Brandon Banks, we had Daniel Thomas on the
Yeah,
team.
in 2000, you're talking 2009.
2009.
Yeah.
2009.
Oof.
So the only games that we lost terribly are Texas Tech at home, or no, Texas Tech on the road, which Texas Tech was excellent that season.
That was the Jeremy Crabtree year.
Yeah, 2009, right?
Yeah.
I'd have to look back and
Yeah,
see.
they were. That was Mike Leach when he had him like number one.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, that was a brutal.
So that game we're not winning, but Oklahoma on the road we lose by 12, and then Missouri on the road we lost by 26. So there's three games Texas Tech and Missouri. I would say we're probably losing to them, and
Yeah.
then we lost on the road to Nebraska 17-3. The big thing all season was we could not score points.
Yeah.
And so do I.
We had
So
Carson Kaufman at our quarterback. I'm pretty
exactly,
sure.
exactly. So for me, I picked Josh Freeman because I think this team goes from 6-6 to 9-3, and the last game of the season at Nebraska, if we win that game, we would have played in the Big 12 championship game because the Big 12 North was so bad that season. The Big 12 North champ was 5-4, or no, yeah, 5-3. Nebraska was 5-3.
5-3.
So I pick Josh Freeman.
That makes a lot of sense. You might have swayed me on that because just the idea of having that was the year we played UCLA in the the first was it the like the big non-con game was UCLA. That was like and we
Yeah,
won that game
no, that
at
was
home.
2010 was
Oh
the UC.
damn.
2009 we played UCLA on the road and we
Okay.
lost 23-9.
Okay, I remember that. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, give me yeah. I'm changing my answer. Even but it would have been fun because Kevin Durant came the year after Michael Beasley left, right? So
I believe so, yeah.
it would have been fun to see Michael Beasley with another year season, Jacob Pullen and Dom Sutton and all those guys. You know, just another really solid squad. Even though it would have been Frank coaching that team, and with him and Beasley, you know, Junkyard dogging it down there, and then having the hype train that would have been Michael Beasley versus Kevin Durant. That would have been fucking nasty, dude. And it would in the future it would have expelled all the arguments of like, oh, who was the best freshman,
Okay. Now I'm thinking, wait.
or was Durant
No,
before Beasley?
Durant was before Beasley.
Okay, it was Blake Griffin at
Blake
Oklahoma.
Griffin was at Oklahoma. So
Okay,
that season, the season that we would be
it was
talking
the
about
year
here,
before. Damn, I'm right. That is right.
the season that
Okay.
we'd be talking about here, we lost 3 non-conference games. Kentucky, we lost by 2. Iowa, we lost by 2. At Oregon, we lost by 5. Michael Beasley
Wins those games.
would probably help win those games. That means we would have went undefeated in the non-conference because our non-conference schedule that year was absolutely terrible. Like we didn't have a good team at home that entire year, which that was pretty typical during my time at K-State. We never played anybody good until Big 12 play,
Yeah.
But like there's some games in here that we just like completely tanked in this season, which is crazy to me. But we lost at Nebraska by 22 points.
Oof. Hold on. Where Jamar Samuels was on that team?
So who's on this team? So Jamar Samuels is on this team.
Okay.
Who else played that season? Well, Dom was on this team. Denny Clemente was on this team.
Oh, that was the first year of Denny and Pullen.
That was the first year of Denny Clemente.
Oh God! Where does Beasley fit in that lineup though? Is he playing 5?
He would have played. He would have played the 4. No, because Kurt Kelly was on this team too.
Yeah.
But Kurt was he was. I don't believe he played that season. No, I think he was the transfer and he had to sit out a year. I'm pretty sure because he played.
Man, oh man.
So I look at the upside. Like that season could have been very interesting if you have a guy like Michael Beasley. Does it change it? I don't know. We went 9-7 in the conference, but
dude, we would have won way more games with Michael Beasley on this team. Are you nuts?
I mean,
dude, he was the best freshman of all.
I know.
He was the best freshman in the last like 50 years, dude. He was so fucking good. Dominant. And imagine another year of him, like, just like college big body and people down there. And I feel like such an idiot thinking that him and Durant would have faced off. But, the Blake Griffin teams were him and his brother were absolutely disgusting. They were jumping over people still. God, that would have been, ooh-wee.
Yeah.
So, you did sway me. I would go Freeman just so I could see him and, him and Daniel Thomas. That team would have been fun, really, really fun to watch with an actual offense and not have Carson Kaufman on that team. That is yuck, dude.
Yeah.
Oh,
that was
with Bill under there too. It would have been fun to see how he used Josh Freeman.
I think that's the thing for me is, and I remember, being a freshman and watching Josh Freeman play, and you saw how talented he was. And I always felt that a year under Bill would have been helpful in his development going into the NFL. At the end of the day, he made millions of dollars, and
he looks great, by the way. God damn, is he handsome?
Yeah. People see him at Woodside. I think he's a member at Woodside in Kansas City. People see him all the time. And you
Shredded.
know, I I don't know where you're seeing this, but
Dude, did you not see him at the catbackers? He is
did he have his
shredded.
shirt off? Like
Basically.
I don't know how you're seeing all this. Like, come on. Oh
I
man,
hope he hears this.
I know. Josh Freeman, listen to our pod, and
Come on. Come
Chef
on
will say
down.
nice things about you. But yeah, I was just thinking of some of the what would you rather's, and those are two that I wish both of them stayed an extra year. But if I had to pick one,
An extra
I,
year. That would have been a good one, dude.
I know.
That is a nasty would you rather, because that made me think for a second. And it's far back, and they were basically they lined up like at K State at the same time. So
Yeah,
like, dude, that is nuts to think about. He would have been his senior year that he was coming back for too, right?
because he
Because he didn't
played.
redshirt. He didn't redshirt.
He was there 15 or no, 2005, 6, 7. Wait, no, it was 6,
He was
7, and
the
8.
'05 class. He was 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, yeah.
My my senior year in high school was his last year there, and I remember us beating Texas, and for some reason there was a Texas fan on the bus, and I'm just like fucking big broing him over the school bus, like, yeah, what up?
Yeah, his last, well, 2008 was his last season there, and we were god awful. We were bad.
Might have been
But
'07 then. Might have
it
been
was
'07. That
07 was '07 we won on the
that was the
road.
one. That was where
and lost.
Ron Prince did the high step down the sideline.
I feel like he did that many times on just I now I just have Ron Prince in my head. Oh my word.
My God,
He might, yeah, I believe that was when Jordy was
running down, yeah,
the
on the
punt doing the
punt,
punt return,
yeah,
and he was doing the high step down the line. That
yeah.
was one of
Okay,
my favorite gifs over time. Yeah.
I'm gonna find that and I'm gonna post it. I'm gonna spam that. If anybody listens to this, spam Matt
Yeah,
Marchesini
with
with
that
the
chip.
with Fireball Matt and Ron Prince doing the high step down the sideline. Spam it.
Oh,
If you're still listening to this,
and the
that's
power
how we'll
towel.
know.
Give me the power towel and bring it to every game.
Those
That
are.
was his,
I mean, what's the all-time? Okay, this would be probably the last thing before we go. What's the best K-State gift of all time? Because I'm the gift god. I make all the best gifts during the football season and
oh
basketball season.
man.
So, what is the best?
I actually have one. I wonder if I can find it. I will have to try and find this. But way back when they had a commercial, a Big 12 commercial, and it was basically these coaches like throwing a basketball at each
Yeah,
other.
was it the Bruce? And then Bruce like disappears off.
Yeah, and there's one he throws it and the ball
It
goes.
knocks him out. That's great. Yeah, I like
Oh
that one. I like Bill like pointing up to the sky, cartoon Bill, and then he transforms into the eagle.
yes,
I love
yes.
that one. That's probably one of my favorites too. When Bill was,
Oh, I have this other one. It's of Bruce Weber doing the YMCA.
oh no,
Oh, I completely forgot about that one. Bruce Weber clapping because he was always like this when
oh
he would
he
clap
was
on the sideline.
the one where he like looks up at the scoreboard. He's like,
Yeah. Bill Snyder eating popcorn. Jack Cantelli hitting the field and breaking his. Didn't he break his like finger when he did that?
oh, I don't remember that.
Um. Oh my God. Oh, I do have. Oh, it's not gonna work, is it? Rob Prince doing. It's Rob
I
Prince
can't.
doing.
Okay, honey, you were glitching out for a second. Oh, there it is.
Oh, and then Bruce Weber, another Bruce. I have a lot of Bruce Weber ones, like
Oh yeah,
dancing.
that's from what is that movie? Oh
I,
my
I
god.
don't know, but
Is that Breaking? That might be Breaking.
maybe.
That's like the opening credits to Breaking.
Well, I just have all these, you know, because there was just a time where Bruce was very like photogenic, and
Yeah.
he just did a lot of things that people created these gifs for. And oh yeah, I got another Ron Prince one. Very, very good here. That's
Yes.
another.
The
Yeah.
stomping is just so out of
It's,
control, dude. He's a psychopath.
if anybody's listening, send us your favorite GIF,
Yeah,
K-State GIF. Oh,
please.
you didn't even answer. What's yours?
I think it's the bill turning into the eagle. That's just like
Yeah.
symbolic
Okay.
for me. It just made me laugh when I was a kid. Like I just like saw old cartoon Bill Snyder just turn into
Yeah.
a fucking eagle. Like it's so ridiculous.
Oh my God.
I
I
like,
could
but
go
I
all night.
all the ones that I've been making. Um, there's just there's a ton of them, and when Adrian bowed from that touchdown that basically sealed the Oklahoma game, I think that is just like it's beautiful, dude. It's just
Yeah.
art.
You're
It's
the
art.
resident you're the resident K-State GIF master, and
Yeah, not
we appreciate the time and effort that you put in to all these.
yeah. Always, I'm here for it. And if
I know.
if if there's anybody left in the K State media, thing, because they're all leaving right now, but they're getting replaced left and right. But I hope they bring that heat like they did this past season, because I mean it's always fun for me to get those threads going, and just that's another thing that I'm excited for, dude. This football season cannot come quick enough.
I know, I know. And we'll have a lot more to talk about, of course, as we get
Absolutely.
towards the football season and getting ready to prep for the upcoming season, not just for football, but for Cocaine Willie as well, for, I would say, our official season too. But
Hmm.
I think that's good for the rest of our show. We do
Yeah.
appreciate everybody who listen in on any of the platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you are not following us, please make sure to follow us on those networks so that you can be updated when a new episode comes out. Also, make sure to follow us on Twitter at Cocaine Willie, and follow us individually, Chef Andre Napier, at Matt Marchesini. I forgot to say that in front of you, Chef, but
That's all
at Matt
good.
Marchesini, and our resident commissioner at Bob Trollsby, who is out on parental leave. But we're excited to uh, hopefully hear from him again soon here on our next show. But Chef, do you want to
Oh, absolutely, dude.
let's go?
Cocaine's a hell of a drug, baby.
Cooking no joke. So
Wildcat
Wildcat
country.
Country. Let's
Let's
ride.
ride. Let's go,
Let's
baby.
go.